Good afternoon, everybody, and thank furlough, it is Friday once again. It's really nice to be with you, and those of you who are being really careful will notice that actually I'm by myself today. Yeah, I'm afraid Mrs. Mount, the furlough fanatic that she is having her teeth done this morning, so she wanted to have a bit of time to recover from that. So I'm very happy to say that we've agreed that. I didn't think it was going to be wise to hear her suffering whilst she was on air, but I've got a few things to talk about. So she's very kindly allowed me to have the screen to myself today. So here we are. So I've got just a couple of things that I want to talk about. So this is going to be a relatively short day today, but I'd then like to get some feedback from you on a number of things. One thing of note is that this is actually a whole year now since we started ICB TV. Our anniversary was actually Tuesday, but our really keen Swiss market department sort of missed that a bit, but never mind. And so next Monday will actually be 12 months, days of the week, since we started this. And we're getting some fantastic responses from everybody. We're even up for an award for our ICB TV, which is really nice. I hope we win. But thank you very much for all those of you who said lovely words about what we've been doing and what we've been trying to do and hopefully achieving. It's been great talking to you. It gave us the opportunity to get to so many more members than literally traveling the country to meet with you. And it also gave Jackie a whole new life being a television personality. So anyway, here we are. So I'm just getting some breaking news here. Oh dear, no, it's all right. Nothing of importance to you. So what I want to do at the moment is cover a couple of items that have come up recently, as late as this morning on various forums. And some of you are having discussions about this, and I just wanted to cover those off. It would appear that some of you are winning clients from accountants, which is absolutely great news, provided you know what's expected of you and you're qualified to do that. I will put in that proviso. But the professional clearance letter, which comes on the ICB website, so those of you who already use it know where it is. Those of you who don't, search professional clearance and you'll get that. That's the letter that you send to the former bookkeeper or accountant of the client to say, can I have copies of all the information that you have on this client, can have copies of their accounts that you've prepared. I'll now be taking over. And it's all done normally in a very gentlemanly, ladylike fashion, whichever you want it to be. And it's a bit annoying for the person losing the account, and it's often a little bit embarrassing for the person winning it, but it's what happens. And the member that telephoned me yesterday, and I've spoken to her this morning again, rang to say, is it normal for accountants to get really iffy about this? And I said, well, not normally, but obviously you've got to appreciate that if somebody's worked hard on the client, or they think they've worked hard on the client, and they are going to lose them to whoever it might be. This particular accountant was a bit annoyed that it was a bookkeeper, but that's beside the point, really. I don't think they realise quite what a bookkeeper does, let alone what an ICB bookkeeper does. But so they weren't very happy at all. And they said this particular firm of accountants that the client had found it very, very hard to get hold of, on receipt of the professional clearance letter, had immediately contacted the client in writing to say, are you sure this is the right thing to do? The client thought it was a bit ironic, really, that having never been able to get hold of the person, this accountant was very quick to write as soon as they were about to lose the account. And they also remembered a few missing invoices. And, oh, by the way, we're going to send you this because we have done a bit of work on the tax in the background, etc., etc. So anyway, and my point was, it's not the usual thing, but it sometimes does happen, and don't take it personally. But one thing that the accountant had said was, you're going to a bookkeeper, not an accountant. You need to make sure that they have professional indemnity insurance, which suggested there might be a problem in the future. But obviously our member does have the professional indemnity insurance. And also make sure that they are qualified, because this particular accountant had looked at our members' letters after her name, and she was, I think, she was FICB, and then she got the payroll certificate as well. She said, so it doesn't say that she can do tax. Well, as you know, we don't have letters after the name for tax because we've got so many additional things that we do now that you'd have 20 or 30 letters after your name to prove what you did. So this is all based on your practice license, what you've been qualified to do. And if anybody ever wants to check up, any of your clients want to check up, they can contact us and we can put them right on that. So that's fine. So congratulations to another one of our members getting a decent client. It was only a relatively small business, but a nice business, family-run business, etc. And the fees that they were paying were a bit silly, but they were, after all, paying for an accountant with a big flashy office, etc. So now they've got a bookkeeper with presumably an equally flashy office, but a little bit more engaged. And I think that was the whole point that this client was making, that the bookkeeper had talked to them, had worked with them, had given them a service, which is what they wanted from their accountant but failed to get. So that's why they moved. And, you know, we constantly talk about the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper. And I am always telling everybody that the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant, quite often, not always, and I'm not damning all accountants by any means, the difference quite often is that personal contact and the fact that our members normally have fewer clients and therefore they have more time to spend with each of their clients. It's a very personal relationship. And if you're a small business person, you're running your business, you know, it tends to take over a lot of your time. So you want to hand over your books to somebody who knows what you're about, so takes the time to work with you. And that's very important. And it's certainly something that I find when I talk to newly qualified members who then want to go into practice. How do I stand out from everybody else that's offering the service? And I said, well, it's all about personality. You know, you're not buying, when you're a small business buying into a bookkeeper, you're not buying a brass plaque, you're not buying a big glass building or something like that. You're buying personality. And that's the main thing. And if you look at our bookkeepers, you look at any of the videos that are on YouTube or anything like that of all our past conferences and seminars, you look at the smiles on the faces of our members. They're happy people, they're engaged, they're talking. And it's exactly that sort of person you want when you're working in a small business. So big up to all of you. You do a fantastic job. Don't ever let anybody tell you any different. And you're good at what you do. And we had, I think I mentioned it last week, we recently had a complaint from a client, and it was about advice given during COVID about furloughing. And they sent us a copy of all the correspondence, the email correspondence, and we found in favor of the member, because I read this stuff and I thought, wow, this is superb. This member absolutely has this to a T. They'd written out all the information. They were spoon feeding them on everything they'd got to do. They put links in there. They backed it up with, this is what I've been told by my professional body, ICB, this is something else that's come about this, and I think you should do this particular thing. The fact that the client had then gone completely the other direction is where the problem actually arose. But I think the important thing is, again, we're here, we're the bookkeeper, we're taking over your books because we know what we're doing. You get on and do your business, you go and sell or make or do whatever you normally do, because you leave your business in our very capable hands, and we're going to look after this business as if it's our own. And I think that's the whole point. Now, some of you do tell us that you have problems with accountants, and we're getting these on quite a regular basis. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of firms accountants out there, so obviously I don't want to build this up too much. But some of you are saying that you find that accountants have a slightly more artistic way of looking at accounts, and you know, they use political license or whatever you want to call it. So whereas you're saying, well, this is definitely an expense, or this is personal, you finish the books off, and if you're handing over to a firm of accountants, they can then suddenly reinterpret everything that you've done, all the hard work you put in. And we're constantly asked by members, well, what do I do? Because they're a firm of accountants and they're telling me, thank you for doing the books, but now we're going to look after the client properly and make sure they don't pay too much tax. Well, tax avoidance is not a good thing, but tax evasion is a bad thing anyway. And you need to make sure that what the firm of accountants is doing with the books is not twisting them and in any way encouraging upon a fraudulent activity, because you can't wash your hands of this and say, well, that's not how the books left me. Even if you've kept copies, some people will say, well, look, I've got copies of what I've done. It's not up to me to know what goes on afterwards. but it is because you've got that knowledge, you know what's going on, and that's because you're a qualified person. Now, if you're not sure that what's happening is correct, you don't think it is, but you're not sure, then talk to us. We'll help you. We've got a helpline. We'll speak to a number of people that we have here. But if you find, and if we inform you that we agree with you that there's some sort of fraudulent activity, tax evasion taking place, then you are then required to put in a suspicious activity report, or a SAR. Now, we get a lot of members complaining this happens, and we instruct them to complete a SAR. Now, I'm talking to various government departments at the moment about this and a number of other matters. And one of the things that I am a little concerned about is that if we look at the number of SARs that our members have put in, and we know this from the government figures they give them on a regular basis, we're advising more people to put in a SAR than appear to have actually put in one. So I want to make sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot here by saying that this is happening all the time, and it turns out not to be the case. Now, it could be that having been faced with a particularly tough bookkeeper, the accountant then says, oh, yeah, I better not do this. And they sort it out with the client, and they decide not to bother changing things. It could be that as a bookkeeper, you're scared of putting in a SAR and any ramifications that might come from that. If ever you've got any concerns like that, you really should talk to us, because at the end of the day, it's a legal requirement. And anything with legal before it means that there's an imperative there, and you can't avoid your responsibility. So, just get in touch. We will talk to you on that. So that's it. Now, following on from that, those two, there has been some talk on one of the forums recently, and it was the person who instigated this actually took it down later. So I think they realised they were asking silly questions, but they were asking whether, when they handed over accounts to an accountant at the end of the year, if they knew that the person had had a tax inspection, did they have to mention it to the accountant? Well, obviously, one would think that the accountant would already know about it, but a tax inspection is just an inspection. It doesn't mean they found anything. It doesn't mean that anything was wrong. You don't really know why they were inspected, whether it was a random thing or something had happened which HMRC were not too happy about. But that's not tipping off. Tipping off is where you know that there is a criminal or HMRC investigation going on in the background, and you mustn't tell anybody that you know about that. Obviously, you can talk to your supervisors, but you can't tell the client that something is happening, because that would tip off the client, and therefore they might cover their tracks. And if the investigation is ongoing in the background, they cover their tracks, the investigation doesn't take place, or the investigation is completely foiled, and that is tipping off. And if you tell a third party that you know something is going on, then again, that is tipping off, and you mustn't do that under any circumstances. But passing on general information about a client that is true and is not in any way fraudulent or otherwise is just passing on information. And you can do that if you receive a professional clearance letter, because occasionally it will happen the other way around. And so, that's, I think that sorts that out. Now, one of the things that I've been asked about this week is one of our members rang me and said that he'd actually taken on an ICB member to work for him, and he wasn't happy with the standard of work. So we said, first of all, well, that person, you've got a person on your AML, you've got a person on your My ICB area. Is this the person we're talking about? I said, yes. So, well, they're not a member. And the man said, well, they told me they were. And I said, well, no. 5 years ago, they were a student of the Institute. They passed their first exam, failed their second, and we've not seen anything of them since. And it turns out that this person, having done one successful exam, one failed exam, decided that they were actually a bookkeeper. And when they applied for a job, I think in the local paper, I can't quite remember, they used the name ICB and the member failed to check that they were actually a current member of good standing of ICB. It's a facility we offer. If you ring us up and say, I'm thinking of taking on this person, we'll ask a few questions first and then I'll probably ask you to put it in writing. But nonetheless, we can tell you this person is a member of good standing or this person is not a member of good standing. We won't go into any detail normally, unless it's some sort of criminal activity, which is unlikely, obviously, but nonetheless. But we will tell you that. Do not assume that somebody who says they're an ICB member is an ICB member. Jane Hardwick, who is our intelligence officer, is always chasing up people who are claiming to be members when they're not. There are a lot of people who do it. You know, we've got certificates being sold on eBay and all sorts of things. We always have had. So just be careful and make sure that you only get the best people working for you. So that's just a minor thing, but it is something which is very important to you when you're taking somebody on. Just see what they're like and what they're about. Make sure if they say they're a member or a fellow or they've got a payroll certificate or they've done self-assessment tax, get them checked out. And we're not breaking any GDPR by telling you that, because it's a matter of public record, and you sign up when you become a member for us to be able to say that we will divulge your qualifications, nothing confidential but your qualifications, if we are asked. We will not say you failed 27 times or anything like that. What we will say is no, they have not achieved that particular examination or that particular level of membership. It just surprises me so often that people just fib. Do they think nobody's going to check? Well, obviously our members prove that they don't check, but I think most people would do. Now, as we're talking about all sorts of fraudulent things and everything else, I've got something here. This is a government white paper. It's called Use of Marketed Tax Avoidance Schemes in the UK. Now, this is a report that was brought out by HMRC. It's got a foreword by Mary Aston, who's the Director of Counter Avoidance, and it is completely skewed in its in what it says here is going on. And the reason is quite simple, but and I'll read you the main part here, which is, if this is a bit that absolutely infuriated me, we're doing something about it at the moment. It says that the tax avoidance market, which is worth billions, 20% of the people involved with tax avoidance schemes put down their category, their employment. Well, here we are. Hold on a second. Yeah, 20% of the people involved in tax avoidance schemes are claimed to be offering bookkeeping services. Now, I was flabbergasted at this. This is HMRC. They obviously know what they're talking about. I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. What's happening? And going through the report, it's about people like nurses, for example, who are being offered tax saving schemes. Now, I've looked into this and they're not bookkeepers. They admit in here, it's just really, really badly written, that the majority of the people involved are from what are called umbrella companies. Now, ICB is completely against umbrella companies. For those of you who haven't come across it, some of our members, some of particularly our new members, in order to, they think, avoid IR35, they sign up. They've tried to sign up with an umbrella company who takes on a sort of employer role, and then they avoid all sorts of hassles because they're then employed, and there's all sorts of things that go on in the background. And we have warned them off, and we've spoken to it. I've personally spoken to at least one, I think it's two umbrella companies, and said what you're doing is wrong. They tend to put the phone down, but they're not regulated or anything else. But it's a scam basically, and the number of organisations doing this. They mentioned some silly figure in here of about 14 or 15 organisations that are doing it, because they've managed to get rid of most of them. But when they have to register their company and they put, what exactly are you going to do? They put bookkeeping services. So they're not bookkeepers. And I'm I've got to call into Mary Aston. I've sent her an email and we're going to have a conversation. I don't think I'm doing it today. I think it's going to be Monday, because this has got to be put right. Now, the reason that we found out about this, obviously we're getting a lot of white papers at the moment, so we hadn't read it from front to back. But this was picked up by the Sunday Times, and the Sunday Times came up with this thing about bookkeepers are all involved with tax avoidance. Mark Lee, who most of you remember Mark, he was one of the presenters at conference talking about ethics. He picked this up and said, I can't believe this. So anyway, I've now been in touch with Mark and said, well, you're right not to believe it because it's wrong. Look at what it actually says. And he said, oh, this is terrible. So he started with a tweet saying this was really bad for bookkeepers. Now he's corrected his tweet by saying this is really wrong. This should not have been put like this. So I'm talking to the Sunday Times as well, because the gentleman who wrote this has obviously picked the bones out of this report very, very quickly, written a short report, and it, to all intents and purposes, bookkeepers that are causing all of the trouble. But it's not. So any of those of you who read it, you're getting incensed, and I've had quite a few members ringing about this. We're hoping to get that redressed in some way, because it's complete nonsense. It makes it sound as if 20% of all the scams in the country are perpetrated by you bookkeepers, and it's not the case. So I'm sorting that out, hopefully. So anyway, on the back of that, I think we this week had 4, I think, of these white papers talking about tax avoidance and various other things, and we are contributing to this. We'll be working, Jackie and I are working on several of them, and got one here for a second. Tax policies and consultations. There's the whole thing in here about who should give tax advice. Should people be registered? I mean, we already have a registered tax agent designation for people who've taken the tax exams with us, and we're saying absolutely yes. At the moment, anybody can set up an office, put tax above the door, and they can advise, and it's completely wrong. And until that is stopped, I don't think government is going to get away with all of the problems that are happening. It can't stop the problems if it can't regulate people properly. And yeah, it's got to be stopped. We're working on that. Several of the other bodies are trying to get the whole accountancy and bookkeeping sector regulated. Again, we're for that. I know AAT, for example, wrote to us recently and asked if we support them in being in getting accountants designated as a special profession. Okay, but bookkeepers should be the same. And the other thing, the big problem we have, of course, is that with AAT, the biggest problem they have is actually with the chartered and certified accountants who don't want another lower tier calling themselves accountants. So, we're out of that particular argument, but we certainly would like to see bookkeepers regulated. HMRC, as the default money laundering regulator, have somewhere in the region, I believe, of around 16,000 bookkeeping and accountancy practices who registered with them instead of with a professional body, which actually makes them the largest regulator across the pitch, really. And it's not right. People have got to have a professional qualification to know what they're talking about, I believe personally, and I know most people in the profession do. Now, it's up to us as professional bodies to make our qualifications relevant, pertinent, to the point, and easily accessible, but we have to maintain standards. And the other thing is, obviously, that things like OPBAS, you're all, as part of your fee to us, a little bit of that fee is to pay for OPBAS. If you're a non-regulated bookkeeper, you're not paying for OPBAS, so they don't look after you. So we're having to jump through all of the hoops, and they're not. So that isn't right. We want to stop that. But we'll be putting out a consultation to you all shortly about who can offer tax advice, what sort of safeguards we can offer as bookkeepers to show that we're good enough to give tax advice. We're not talking about heavy-end tax schemes. What we are talking about, obviously, is self-assessment tax returns, corporation tax for micro businesses, and also for small businesses under FRS 105, 102A. So it's all the stuff that we're doing now, but we want to make sure that we are going to be in a position to say that our members are properly regulated, they're insured, they've got all of the ethical support that they need, they are looking after the job properly. Now I'm starting to get a few questions coming in, which is good, so I'm just going to have a quick look and see what we've got on here. Whoops, sorry, Lee Morris. Was he able to terminate employment? Yeah, I know. Right. This is the person who lied. Yeah, that's an ongoing thing at the moment. But yes, the person lied on their application, so we understand that's going through the legal processes now. It's never easy to get anybody. Unfortunately, you'd think it would be, but it isn't. But yeah, that's going through the process at the moment. And Susan Bruland says, "What, 20% of bookkeepers? How do we fight this? It's so unfair." Good on you, Gary. Great. You spelled my name wrong, Sue, but I won't hold that against you for too long anyway. 2 hours and Gary. Very proud of my hours. Anyway, yeah, it's a nonsense, but it's the typical sort of government report that blandly covers this whole sector with you know, a statement. Then somebody who obviously sits there at the head of this department then puts her name to it. Presumably she read the report and also think, God, bookkeepers, this is terrible. If not, she should have changed it. And it's not right. It's not bookkeepers. It's people who are offering bookkeeping services to a limited number of people who are trying to avoid tax. And it's absolutely wrong that they should whitewash the whole profession. So we are going to sort that out, because you know, I know from bitter experience that some MP will read this somewhere and use it in a speech, and then somebody from the House of Lords will think it's right, or she will use it in a speech. I mean, it's a nonsense, so it's got to be stopped. And you know, we're in the process of doing that. I will let you know next week how it comes along. I've as I say, I've got the personal contact details now for the lady who wrote the foreword. And I think the good thing that will come out of this is that she is obviously quite an important person. It's not somebody I've dealt with before, but if we can get now a little bit higher up the ladder to Mary Aston, Director of Counter Avoidance, we can work with her, because we're all here to counter avoidance. That's what bookkeepers are about. You know, I've said it so many times before. If it happens, it's in the books. If it doesn't, it's not in the books. It's as simple as that. We are black and white in everything that we do. And we need to show people, particularly governments and the likes of Ms. Aston, Mary Aston, that we are serious about what we do, and we can be relied upon to help them, not offer 20% of all the tax fiddles that are going on. So, thank you, Sue. She's corrected it. I've now got 2 R's. Yes, it's only a bit of fun. Right, and yeah, that's okay. So I don't know if any of you got any queries on this. This is going to be a short program today, as I say, because Jackie isn't here. There's not much happening on the furlough. She hadn't got much to say anyway, so she opted for a dental appointment in the morning, and we were. She was a bit concerned that she might feel a bit groggy, and we didn't want to push her into that one. She will be back next week. We've got lots of things going on, so she'll be coming back onto this. If you've got any comments about any of this, if you'd like to drop a line into customer services and mark it up ICB TV, and then we can do that. And look out, please, for the consultation that we're doing on the tax agents, because again, that is very important. We don't want to take a retrograde step, go back to the old days where bookkeepers just do, you know, 2 and 2 is 4. That's not what we're about. Bookkeepers are not that. And, you know, it's very important that we maintain that. I mean, one of our groups in one of the other countries has decided that they want to change the names and what a bookkeeper does and all the rest of it. And we're telling them they can't, because, you know, we've been fighting for 24 years to become professionals, to get recognized professionals. I think we've done a really good job. You've done a fantastic job, and we don't want to take anything that goes back. And Nadine Harrison says, sadly, the introduction of IR35 to the private sector is encouraging more and more clients to use umbrella companies because they're afraid of the off-payroll working rules. They insist that their contractors use them in order to work with them. I hate umbrella companies. Yeah, Nadine, if you've got any specific experience there and you think that you've got information which might be useful for us when we're making representation to government in the future, please let us know. And actually, it'd probably be best if you we'll put you through to Jackie, because I think she'll probably be doing some of this, and I'll be doing some, and then we will bring in some other experts. It's a big subject. It is a big subject, and it is IR35 that's caused it. But one other thing that came out in the recent budget, I think, is that the government is moving to try and level the playing field a little bit. So self-employed versus employed, limited companies versus sole trader, all that sort of stuff. You will remember quite early on in the days of ICB TV, we had Bill Dodwell on, who's from the Tax Simplification Office, or Office for Tax Simplification, I think its true title is OTS. And he was saying it isn't right the way that the system is balanced at the moment. And they're constantly talking to government about aligning it. And I think, again, talking to one of our members this morning, a lot of this will come about because all of a sudden, lots of directors, for example, who've been paying themselves a minimum wage and then a big a dividend at the end of the year, have missed out on the COVID funding. And a lot of self-employed people have realized that, you know, they're treated differently because they haven't been paying as much national insurance as the limited company people. So hindsight's a wonderful thing. Nobody expected this. It seemed like a good idea at the time, obviously, however you register and set up your business. So we need to make sure that it suits everybody along the line. I mean, obviously, we don't want to stop people starting a business. We want to make it as easy as possible for them, but they have to run it properly. I've got Deborah here who says, I would like to say Jackie helped me with a query this week with VAT. I am a new member and I just want to say the support really is first class. Thank you. Well, thank you, Deborah. I mean, we do talk about our support. We do try to make it as good as we say it is. You know, we are here for you. The reason that we set ICB up originally was that we found that when June and I were working with a firm of accountants, we couldn't get a decent bookkeeper anywhere. So that was the first thought. But then we realized that actually everybody we approached was sort of self-taught. Nobody really got a very strong qualification. Nobody got professional indemnity insurance. We were sort of out on our own if they got something wrong. So we set up ICB to try and redress that, not to gang up on the bookkeeper, but to say, actually, bookkeepers, if you're going to be professionals and you're going to be ahead of the game and you're going to be trusted and revered even for what you're doing, you have to be part of something which is professional, and you need a professional body. And lo and behold, here we are. And I think what we've done has been justified. I think people nowadays talk about bookkeepers far more often than they used to, and they talk about them in much better terms than they used to. So, and there was an interesting tweet, I can't remember it word for word, but from Garry Turner at Zero, who was saying that he's just had a bill from an accountant and the bill was wrong. And it was old and he'd already paid it and something or other. And he said, it's not the software, because actually they use Zero. You know, you've still got to have good people using it. And I retweeted and said, yeah, absolutely, Garry, you've always said that, you know, that it's not just about good software, it's also about good bookkeepers. And I got the thumbs up. And those of you who've been to our summits will know that Garry Turner has always said, look, this is about people. It's people who are running a business. It's about people who are helping them with their books. It is constantly about people. It's not just about algorithms. And as I've said many times on here before, you've only got to look at the mess with the A-levels the year before last and how the algorithms got everything wrong. And, you know, we're going to be in a terrible mess if we rely too much on technology. Technology is a wonderful tool. And, you know, we couldn't have got through COVID without being at the head of the game. And bookkeepers, you've adopted technology and cloud technology so quickly, so easily. That's why you did win out over COVID. That's why you were able to lead the pack, because you'd already been there, done that. You'd got the cloud. So it wasn't new for you. You didn't have to learn a new set of tricks just because of COVID. You just had to learn about COVID and adapt what you were already doing. So I think that's brilliant. I think we are. I've got a few more people in there saying thank you very much for ICB TV and what have you. And I won't thank you very much. I won't read them all out because it's very nice, but it's a bit embarrassing, really. We're here to serve. We enjoy doing it as much as hopefully you enjoy receiving it. And I think we'll. What time is it? It's 22. Yeah. So. I think we'll call that a day for the moment. That's all I've got to say. I hope you've found those things useful, and I hope you will help us with the contributions towards the white papers. We will be writing to you shortly. I think there are 4 papers in total, and we need your impressions. We need to know, your first-hand experience of some of these things so that we can make proper representation to government. Because by getting involved with white papers, we're always at the hub, and that's important that we are there. So thank you very much, everybody. It's looking a bit dull and dismal down here. I'm hoping some of you got some sunshine somewhere. I've just been on a Zoom meeting with somebody from Cheshire, and they were saying that it's lovely weather up there. So yeah, it's our turn to get the rain down here, I think. But if nothing else, it brings out the colours and the grass. The grass is getting very, very long. So have a wonderful weekend. We look forward to seeing you next week. There isn't going to be a mic on Monday this time because I think we're going to do something slightly different with Mike now. He's going to do a monthly thing for you. I'm going to try and get Mike and Steve to come on next week. I'll let you know which day it is, because Steve is retiring as our director and Mike is taking over. So that's going to be a good handover. And next Friday is bank holiday. Of course it is. So it'll, thank Thurlow, it's Thursday then, or something like that. What's that? Will be. I think I get an email from Kirsty just to prove that she's on here again. Actually, we were going to try and get Kirsty on here today because as we've been doing this now for 12 months, I think she's been on every time. Lee Morris, Deborah. No, where's she then? Hold on a second. It is. Yeah. Will it be Thursday instead of Good Friday? Yeah, I think it will be. But we'll keep you totally up to date on that. Certainly, we wouldn't want to take you away from your Good Friday. And we will see you next week sometime. So thank you very much. Stay safe, be careful, and get those jabs if you can. And we'll see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.